All right. Hello. I am going to try to do this. I'm probably one of the most technically challenged people I know, but we will try to make this work. Uh, let's see. Okay, we're going to do this and that. Okay. Hello. My name again is Ann Harrison. I'm just going to record. We did a session together a couple days ago, but just in case some people had to step out or missed it, I'm going to just try to do my best to recreate that. There'll be some, of course, some changes because it's not live, it's recorded, but I just wanted to let you know that as I go through. So just a little bit about me. I'm Ann Harrison, mom to 7 kids. This picture is our most recent family shot that we had taken at our daughter and son-in-law's wedding 2 weeks ago. I'm a mom to 7 kids. 3 of those kids are biological and 4 are adopted from China. And then, yeah, just a little bit about me. I love art of all kinds, and I love reading all kinds of books, and I am perpetually late. So that's a little bit about me. My talk is just on the purpose of parenting. So why are we here to parent? Well, really and truly, what we're doing is playing the long game. We are not in this to experience every moment, although that is a blessing. We're here to really invest in another human being in the long term. So not really thinking about the results of today, but really those results for the future. So we're going to start with making a decision to have a child. It's momentous. It is to decide to forever have your heart go walking around outside your body. So that is just the truth of it. You are given the privilege of being a parent, and it is one, I call it the beautiful ugly, one of the most wonderful and difficult experiences we get to do on this earth. So one of the things I want to talk about as we talk about this idea of the long game, the playing the long game is just the idea of doing something that sets you up for the future. So doing something now that sets you up for the future. As we talk about parenting, there's kind of 3 categories that I really can see this break down into. What about me? What about us? And what about them? When I say what about me, that really is kind of you. What is it about you? When you're a parent, really and truly, one of the best things that you can do to be a good parent is to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's very easy to wear ourselves really thin when we're parents because there's a lot of things that are demanding our attention. We have our house to care for, we have people to feed, we have people to bills to pay, never mind a job with a boss who's demanding and things like that. So just really making sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And as I was kind of doing some research, I found these 4 areas that I think are just kind of easy to tap into: sleep loss, social isolation, an unequal workload, and depression. When I say sleep loss, I found a statistic. It says that when we are sleep deprived, this is just within a couple days of sleep deprivation, we lose 91% of our cognitive abilities, and our mood also increases at an equal amount, at 91%. That is most of who we are. So if you think about that in the aspect of like parenting, you have a toddler or a teenager who's giving you a difficult time, you have nothing to give them if you're not getting enough sleep. So just paying attention to how can you create a really healthy sleep environment. The next one is social isolation. What I love about this is a secular study. So this isn't biblical that I'm sharing these statistics with you, but social isolation being a detriment to us, well, that is biblical. The Bible tells us over and over again in the New Testament and really the Old Testament as well, but that God created us for community. I mean, he himself is community with himself in the Trinity. So we are created to spend time with other people. And the way that you can do that is with your friends or through your small group at your church or your life group or however your church breaks that down, making sure that you gather with people be that, if you're in lockdown or you're having, being careful about COVID or whatever's going on, just making sure that even if it's just through Zoom or you're meeting in a park or you're meeting in a public place for now, so you can keep social distance, do not negate coming together with other people. It's just vitally important, not only to your mental and emotional health, for your spiritual life, and for your parenting as well. The third thing that I want to talk about is just having an unequal workload. What I mean by that is that one parent feels that they're kind of carrying the weight in the home, with all the responsibilities. And this can happen so easily, especially if one parent is working and one is not, or sometimes even if both parents are working. There's not often really where this starts is in clear communication. When you can communicate clearly with each other about your expectations, that breakdown works a lot better. So just having time to talk to your spouse to say, hey, I really would appreciate it if you would help more with the laundry. I shared the other night, so if you're watching this again, it's a repeat, but I struggled with this early in my own marriage. I would often play the martyr of, oh, my husband doesn't, ever do anything around the house, but I never asked him to. And so he just naturally thought that I would do it. And then I would get more angry and he couldn't figure out why. And we'd play this game and it was awful until finally one day I just started asking him, would you take out the trash? Can you help me with the dishes? And then we began to shift our workload to a more appropriate sharing. And it has helped our marriage tremendously. So just making sure, and it's always good to check back in with each other and see how you're feeling about that, especially if you are beginning to feel like it feels unequal, then talk about that. How can you find the solution? And remember, your goal is really to help each other, not just to alleviate your own stress. And the fourth thing is just if you're depressed. I have struggled myself with depression in my own journey. I had postpartum depression, all three of my actual pregnancies. It's just can be a really difficult time. And so when you're depressed, you really want to seek help to take care of that. For me personally, I started seeing a counselor. Now, I started seeing a counselor 13 years ago, and I still see her today. I'm not depressed, but it's just good healthcare for me. It's just a good way that I can take care of myself, and then I can be a good parent to my kids. I can be a good wife to my husband, and honestly, I could be a good person in my community. Taking care of myself helps me to take care of others. So if you are depressed or you're struggling with that, if I have resources that I can help you with, so please reach out through email or some sort of social media. I'm on most of them. So just, let me know, because I really am passionate about that. And I think it's a stigma that we can have on ourselves that, oh, I'm a believer, I shouldn't be depressed. But some of my greatest heroes have struggled with depression, who are Christians. So it doesn't mean you're a bad Christian. It just means that you're human and you are fallible and that you need help sometimes, and that's okay. So if you have sleep loss, social isolation, you feel an unequal workload, or you're depressed, talk about those things, find some solutions to those, and take care of yourself. And the next thing that I want to talk about is, what about us? There's a study by a man and a woman. Their names are John and Julie Gottman. You can Google the Gottman Institute if you want further information. Again, this is a secular study, but they can predict within a 90% rate of a couple, by sitting with a couple and interviewing them, if the couple will divorce. And they have done years and years and years of research on this, and it's really quite interesting. But they say to make empathy a reflex. Empathy is the ability to share your feelings. So when you can make empathy a reflex, that means that you are able to take on and empathize with the person that you're talking to. So in this case, I'm referring to your spouse. If you and your spouse are having a difficult time together, when you can relate to them and you can feel what they're feeling, you diffuse a hostile situation so quickly. Now, this works with all people, so not just your spouse, but I want to encourage you to start there. Empathize with your spouse. So an example that I gave the other day was, I was angry. My husband came home late from work. I was feeling a little overwhelmed by the responsibilities that I had, and we had communicated one thing, another thing happened. He came in and I was cold and rude, and he instantly empathized with me and said, you have a lot to do this evening and I was late. I'm really sorry that I did that. And I couldn't be mad because he saw me. He recognized that it had hurt my feelings and that I was feeling overwhelmed, and I instantly was calm. So practice this with your spouse. Describe the emotional change that you think you see. Like, for example, I see that you are angry. Make a guess as to where that emotion is coming from. I think you're angry because I was late coming home from work. I'm really sorry about that. Just connecting with that person, with your partner, is huge. So I just would encourage you to really make empathy a reflex, and then making time for each other. So when I spoke before about talking about the workload in the home, or if your spouse is depressed, social isolation, all these things, this is an area that you can really work on. Like, it's an actual thing you can give yourself goals for, to make time for each other. Schedule check-in time morning and evening, just to be able to make sure that you guys are on the same page with everything. Talking about the workload, talking about what on with your day. If you're having a struggle with a child, this is a good time to do this. This isn't a time to argue, or, especially if you're doing it in the evening, you want to be able to go to bed in a good place. So sometimes it's okay to table deeper conversations to where you can have more time to talk about those, but make sure that you are connecting with each other in the morning and in the evening. Also, schedule time without kids. Make sure, and I mean, schedule it. Like, sometimes you can't just wait for it to happen. You have to say, okay, on the third Friday of each month, we are going to have time, do a date swap with someone else. Make sure that you are able to spend time, just the two of you, to reconnect and have fun together. And then scheduling time for sex. I know that this sounds unromantic and all of that, but life is hard and there's a lot of things coming at us all the time. And so this is not my information. This is just statistical information that says couples who do this have a much happier and better marriage. Because if you're waiting for that natural, thing to happen, sometimes it just doesn't, because there's too much laundry, there are too many dishes, there are too many responsibilities that are demanding your time. So schedule that in, whether it's once, twice, 3 times a week. Honestly, the more the merrier, they say, or not merrier, the better. Not the more the merrier. That's not what I meant. I mean, just making sure that you have plenty of time for each other and that your needs are both being met. And again, going back, talk about those things. What are your needs, and what's a reasonable expectation for that? Just communication, honestly, is really how you can really care for your marriage. And what about us? The next slide that I want to share, this is a verse that I just really cling to as a parent. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. That is a promise from the Proverbs. And I really feel like that is true, especially as the world is coming against our kids right and left. And there are so many opportunities for decisions to walk away from the church. But as you're training your child, you're really training them for this again is the long game that you're playing. When he is old, he will not depart from it. I mean, that very word "when" lets us know that you're playing a game for the future here. You're not thinking about train up a child so that today they'll behave. When they are old, they will not walk away from their Lord. And I just want to encourage you that, what you're doing now is investing so that your child has a lifetime relationship with the Lord. And we're going to kind of talk about that in this next slide. What about them? How can we help our kids? What we did kind of in our live time together was we kind of broke these down together a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of give you an example here. And again, I would love to talk further if you have questions, but so an example of this is like you're in a public place with your child and they start to say, I am thirsty. Let's say you're standing in a line somewhere. Mommy, I want water right now. And you can see, your child, that they're about to implode if they don't get what they want right away. You can say, hey, calm down. Don't lose your temper in a public place. You're embarrassing me. You could say, you know what, you're going to have to wait. You need to get over it. You could ignore them. Like there's a thousand ways that you can respond, but this goes back to making that empathy a reflex. If you can empathize with them, and I dare you to try this, it's really quite incredible. Empathize with them and say, for example, the child who would like a glass of water, you say, oh, wouldn't a glass of water feel so good right now? I bet an ice cold glass of water sounds really good to you. And you know what? As soon as we get out of here, I'm going to get you a glass of water. Well, 9 times out of 10, that will calm your child to know that they are seen and they are heard. And you're helping to calm their systems back down to be able to regulate again, just by empathizing with them. Empathize with them to get the behavior that you want. Genuinely, don't do it in a fake way, because our kids know us better than anyone else, and they will know when you're not telling the truth. But really empathize and make sure that you help meet that need in them. And this plays out in a lot of ways. For example, we talked about your daughter's making fun of another kid while you're playing, talking that out with the kid, not saying, how could you do that? I'm so embarrassed, or, oh, the nerve, but saying, hey, you must be feeling pretty insecure yourself that you would want to do that. Can you talk to me about that? What's going on with you? That's not like you. Is there something I can help you with? Ask questions, seek to find the answer and get to the heart, to the root of what's going on with your children. Another example we talked about is your teenage son has pornography that you found on the computer. If you go in attacking them, they're going to be defensive. But if you go in asking questions, pornography is really a symptom of a bigger problem going on. What's going on in their heart that they're using pornography to mask a pain that's inside of them? Ask your child, how can I help you? What can I do to help you here? Ask them, something's bothering you, I can tell, because I know that you wouldn't make this choice if it wasn't. And seek to be an expert on your child and empathize with them. Man, I bet looking at those pictures make you feel better temporarily, and then helping guide them into the right choices. But long term, that's just not going to help. How can I help you in a more productive and better way? And then remembering that if you have a hard, fast rule, for example, pornography, there's a punishment that follows. Just because you empathize with them doesn't mean that negates the rules in your home. Their phone, their computer, whatever it is that they have, they're grounded. Follow through with the hard lines that you have down. You've created boundaries in your home for a reason. Have those boundaries. Just make sure that the goal is to always point the child back to Christ and bringing them back to center. You want to help to regulate their brain, and so that the decisions that they're making one way or another is to really, when you're guiding them, you are their guide. You are guiding them back to center, and that's the goal. And then again, how do we play this long game? How do we do this? What does that really look like when I say that? Because it can feel a little overwhelming to think, my child is 6 months old. How am I going to do this for the next 20 years? First of all, let me say it goes so fast. But second of all, I will tell you that here's just a couple little tips. And again, this is something I'm passionate about. Would love to talk more if you're interested. But how do we play the long game? Well, first of all, you invest in your children now so that you are not forced to invest in them later. What I mean by that is you're building relationships with your kids. You build a relationship with your child now, when they're older, when they're 13, 14, 18, 20, 25, you're much more likely to have influence in that child's life because you have a relationship with them. They want to share things with you because you're trustworthy. And how you show them you're trustworthy is by meeting their needs when they're 2, 3, 4 years old, by spending time with them when they're in that age group, by reading to them, by playing with them, by sacrificing your own desires to be with them. Now, what I'm asking you, I know is really difficult, but I have to say, if you have no relationship with your kids, you will have no influence. And the way that we can really do that is by changing our perspective from I have to I get to. And again, this is just hard science. There have been study after study after study done of this. When we can change the language that we use to change our behavior, we can change our behavior and how the situation occurs to us. So let me say that again. When we change our language, what we're saying, we are able to change our behavior and how a situation will occur to us. So for example, oh, I have to wash the dishes every day. It's exhausting. I hate it. To, you know what? I am really tired tonight, but I know if I wash the dishes, I will feel ready for the day tomorrow. I'm just so thankful that I get to have a family to share meals with. Now, this feels a little bit like, you know, tongue in cheek here, like, oh, it's easy to say that, but I really do hate doing the dishes. Well, I want to make sure that you acknowledge the feeling that you have. I really hate bedtime at our house. It makes me so stressed out. That's okay to feel like that, but motivate yourself by changing what's going on in your mind. Bedtime is really hard, but you know what? It's an opportunity of the day that I get to really focus in and spend time with my kids while I help them brush their teeth. We could sing a song together. I can tell them a Bible verse while we're doing that. Getting to sing to them to sleep. One thing that was really hard for me when I had my big kids were really little was they took forever to go to sleep at night. And I usually was the one that laid them down, but I got to sing to them. And at first, you know, I would kind of, and some nights I failed and I didn't do a great job, but often when I could keep my attitude in check and I could change my verbiage of what I was saying from I have to I get to, I would remember that I get to be the last one to be with them in the day that God has given them. I get to nurture them into sleep and to care for them in that way. It's a privilege for me to make sure that their needs are met and now those tiny people don't need me to sing them to sleep at night anymore. They don't need me to brush their teeth anymore. They're completely independent because I'm working myself out of a job. My goal, I had a big discussion one time with my daughter because she wouldn't make her bed, and making a bed is just a weird thing that I like to do in our home. And we had a big discussion one day, and I meant this. I said, child, I need you to know I would make your bed for you until you're 100 years old if I could. I love serving you in this way. And I mean that. I really did enjoy doing those things for my kids. But it's not fair to you for me to do that. And we transitioned and worked me out of a job. So there were years that it felt overwhelming to me to have to meet those needs, to nurse a baby, to make dinner, to potty train, to do all those really hard things. But all of a sudden we transitioned and that child began cooking for themselves, making their own bed, doing their own laundry, all of those things, becoming more and more independent, so that then you're launching them into the world so that they can care for themselves, and hopefully they will care for other people as well. And they will know how to do that because they have been cared for well by someone else. So the goal is working yourself out of a job. And the best way to play this long game is to add in, not to take away. When we look at Colossians 3:12-14, it says, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, meekness, humility, patience, bearing with one another. And if one has a complaint against another, forgive each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. So by putting on these things, put love being the biggest one of all, okay? By putting these things on, what happens is when we're changing these patterns in our life, when we add something in, then we have a much better way of finding that the other things that we don't want. And it even talks about this in Colossians of getting rid of anger and malice and all these things. When we add in, they overtake the things that we don't want there. I heard this talk one time that was really brilliant. And it was a woman who was talking about a sin in her life. And then someone said, when you became a Christian, did you stop that sin? And she said, you know, I really wish that I could say that I did, but I'll tell you this, I got to a point where I wanted Jesus more and the sin began to go away. Well, that is what I'm asking you to do. You get to a place as a parent who wants Jesus more. You want Jesus more in your life so that you can give Jesus more to your children's life. You add in those things. And I'm talking about practical things. This is talking about relational things in Colossians, but I even mean the practical things. So for example, you're having a hard time spending time with your spouse and you guys are fighting and you're not seeing eye to eye. Add in the scheduled time with each other. Add in time for sex. Add in time to talk about your budget or your schedule or things like that. Add in a date night once a month. You don't have to go crazy about it. Another example that I gave was that I was getting really sick when I was eating meat, and I slowly needed to get meat out of my diet. Well, when I thought about just quitting meat cold turkey, I had no box for that. It felt overwhelming to me. But what I did was I started adding in more vegetables. I started adding in more things that were good for me in that way. And slowly but surely, I didn't even want the meat anymore. And so now I don't eat meat at all. Well, a year and a half ago, I would never even believe that was possible. Not at all. I love meat and I still love meat, but it just doesn't love me. And so slowly but surely, by adding in, I was able to get rid of those things that were not good for me. And now I'm eating things that are good for me. Well, it's the same pattern with our hearts. It's the same pattern with our behavior. So let me encourage you, add things in, put on these things, and you will find that you will slowly, it will just be a thing of the past. Anger, frustration, losing your temper. It doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, but by making sure that you're adding in compassion, it says kindness, humility, ask the Lord to help you to add those things in, and you will find that the other things will disappear. And then I just kind of want to close with this idea of where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come from the strength of the ox. When you're playing the long game, you're remembering that this season is hard. Our oxen are our children. Our manger is our home and our responsibilities. It's messy. There's a lot of things happening all the time. But if we want abundant crops, if we want blessing, then we have to know that that comes from the strength of the ox. If we want our legacy to go on beyond just ourselves and through our children, for the gospel to be shared with other people, then we have to know that it's going to be hard. It's going to be a messy time in our lives, and that's okay. See the blessing amidst the mess. Count those blessings. Change the patterns of your mind so that you can think differently about a situation that's not going to change. Your kids are still going to make a mess. They're still going to have temper tantrums. They're still going to do those things because they're humans learning to be more like Christ. They're going through that sanctification process. But allow yourself to change your perspective and to remember that through these kids is where your abundant crop will come from. That's all that I had to share. So hopefully this is a help to you. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to Deepa, and I would love to be able to answer any of those questions that you might have. But it really has been more of a blessing to me. I wish I could sit with you in person, but maybe someday the Lord will allow us to do that. So have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you hopefully another time.